Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you the full grading process of how I got a clip from this to this. Okay, so I have an interview type setup here. With this I wanted a kind of a dreamy but also subdued kind of dramatic look. So not very poppy colors. So as you can see, like the background and my clothing reflects that, but I wanted to accentuate that in the grading. So we're going to go to the color tab. Okay, so just to quickly explain the difference between color correction and color grading for those who are not familiar. Color correction is when you take a flat image like the one I have here and you kind of bring it back to how it looks naturally. So you fix the shadows, the highlights, the saturation, and overall just bring it back to a natural look. And color grading is when you take that natural look and you change it to fit more what you're going for stylistically or story wise. So it doesn't really need to look natural or look like how it seems to us naturally in real life, but it just needs to fit the style that you're going for. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly create my color correction nodes and then explain to you in more detail how the look is created. So as you can see, I have my beginner 4 node setup, which is basically my overall color correction. As you can see, the first node is sharpness, and the reason why it's sharpness is because I normally shoot at -1 sharpness. So basically what your camera does is automatically it adds artificial sharpness to your image, and I don't like that. So I normally shoot at -1 sharpness, so I have more control over how sharp I want my image. So normally I like to start off by adding the sharpness with this node and then the normal correction nodes, as you can see here. So in the correction node, I fixed the highlights and the shadows by going to the primary wheels, and I used gain to fix the overall highlights, and I used lift to fix the overall shadows. And then I have a contrast node because, as you can see, without the contrast, it kind of, the highlights and the shadows are all very unrealistic. So I just added some contrast, as you can see here, just to where it looks natural from the eyes. And then as you can see, without the color, it's quite flat, which is not realistic. So I added color until I felt it looked natural. Normally, if I see the white balance is off, I will add a white balance node, but I didn't really see a need for that. So normally I would add that after the sharpness. Okay, so now that we finally finished the correction node setup and we finish color correcting the overall footage, we can finally get to grading. What I normally like to do before actually getting to the grading is I like to think of first the look that I want, then I look at the actual footage that I have so far and think of how far I am from that look, and then all the things I need to do to get from what I have now to the actual look, and that becomes sort of a to-do list, and also that becomes a node list to get to where I want. Okay, so first things first, we're going to think about the look and feel that we're going for with this clip. So the look and feel I'm going for is a dreamy, hazy, warm yet desaturated, dramatic kind of look. So now that we have a list of things or qualities that we want this footage to have, we can now compare that to the actual footage that we have after color correction. So as we can see, the curtains, the light coming from the curtains are quite cold because of the morning light that it was shot in. And the skin tones are not warm, it's like a yellowish hue, which you don't want. Overall, the color harmonies on it's not working together. There's blues, there's yellows, there's warms, there's browns. It's all kind of mixed. So what I want is, like I said, a warm yet desaturated look, and that's not what we have here. There's no dreamy quality at all. The contrast is quite realistic. There's no dreamy lighting or any just dream qualities of it, so that's also going to be something we need to do. So judging by what we actually have of this footage, I'm going to make a list of what I think I need to do to achieve that look. Okay, so judging by the comparison I made between the list of things that I want for the footage and the actual footage, I made 2 sections of a to-do list that I need. The first section is color, the second section is dream. So color is going to be focused on fixing the skin tones, taking away that yellow and bringing in a more orange look, also getting rid of that blue in the curtains and kind of desaturating it, and then overall introducing a warmer tone to the footage, and then maybe desaturating the footage a bit. The dream section is basically where I try and get that dreamy effect after doing the look, and this is where I'm going to add a glow effect. Then I'm going to add a radial blur, the effect of which you can see here in this example, and then finally I'm going to add a vignette, and then I'm going to see if overall that's enough for what I want. Okay, so I'm going to put the correction nodes to one side, and I'm going to start with the color section. This is going to be the skin tones. I'm going to call this skin tones, and I'm going to go over to the curve section again, and I'm going to go to the hue versus hue, which in the other tutorial I showed how it can change any color. I'm going to select the yellow, zoom into my skin tones, and I'm just going to bring that more. As you can see, it goes from yellow over to a more warmer orange look. As you can see in the before and after, you can really see how much yellow there was in that skin tone and how this fixed it. So once we've got those skin tones to that warm look and we've gotten rid of that yellows that we don't like, we can make a new node, and this is where we are going to tackle the curtains. I'm going to call this curtains. And like I said before, this is where we want to get rid of that cold hue that's coming from the morning light that was shot in. So I'm going to go to the hue versus saturation. The hue versus saturation in the curve section again is allows you to take a hue, take a color, and just get rid of it, or saturate it or desaturate it. So I'm gonna guess the overall hue of this curtain. I think it's more of a richer blue. So I'm not going to click on this blue, I'm going to click on this blue, and I'm just going to bring that down. As you can see, if I bump it up, it gets very saturated. If I bump it down, kind of gets rid of it. As you can see, we immediately have a more harmonious color system here. All of the colors kind of feed into each other and kind of blend well. It feels much more like a cinematic, much more dramatic look. And now for the next node, I'm going to introduce just a bit more warmth. So I'm going to call this warmth. And I'm going to go over to the primary wheels, and I'm going to go to this temperature section. This basically allows you to make the footage colder by going to the left and warmer by going to the right. So I don't want, like I said, I don't want a warm wash. I'm just going to go a bit more. There we go. And as you can see, this immediately gives you kind of an almost stylized warm look. But I want to take this further. I want it to be dreamy. I want it to be more dramatic. So this color section is basically finished. This concludes the color section of the list that we made. And now we are going to move on to the dream section. Okay, so I'm going to make a new node. I'm going to call this glow. I'm going to go over to the effects panel. I'm going to search for glow, drag that onto the node, and immediately you can see it's not a huge difference, but it immediately adds to that dreamy effect that we're going for. I've already touched on the glow effect in my previous tutorial, so I'm just going to go through it and just kind of go off my eye, and then you guys can just follow along with me. Okay, so I'm going to make it a bit more intense, and I'm going to make it spread less and more of, there we go. Zoom out. I'm liking this. I might make it a bit more intense, and then make it spread a bit more. Okay. I don't like how it's blowing out the highlights. I'm okay with the blowing out the highlights, but not too much. I'm just gonna lower. There we go. Check. Okay, so let's check before and after. Don't like how much spread that is. I'm gonna make it a bit less and make it a bit more intense. Make it less spread. I like that. Check the before and after. Maybe a bit less. There we go. I like that. And now I'm going to add the radial blur on the outer edges of the shot to make it more like a mind's eye dreamy kind of effect. So I'm going to make a new node. I'm going to call this blur. And I'm going to search for radial. There we go. And as you can see immediately on the outer edges, let me make it a bit more extreme so you can see. It kind of adds this nice, very disorientating effect, which can be a bit overwhelming, but you need to be a bit smart with it. You don't want to use it too intensely. I don't like how close the blur spread to my body and my face. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the mask section, go to a circular mask, and I'm going to kind of make a vignette area, like an area where the blur needs to be. I'm going to make it softer, and I'm going to invert it. So basically what is happening is the mask automatically restricts the blur to only happen inside the mask, but I want to invert it with this button, and I'm going to make it only happen outside the mask. I'm going to click there. As you can see immediately we have control now where the blur needs to be. And I definitely like that. As you can see, it immediately adds like a smear outside the immediate area of the character, and it adds like a nice dreamy effect. So I'm just going to make it a bit less, a bit too intense for me. You can go to these sections here where my mouse is, and you can kind of control the shape of the mask. So I'm just going to do that. There we go. And for the next node, I'm going to add a vignette effect, which is basically a dark area around the character as well, to add more concentration on the character and to overall accentuate that feeling of you are in the mind of the person, or maybe this person is disorientated, his perception is kind of narrowed as well. So you're kind of accentuating that dreamy effect. So I'm just going to call this Vig. Then I'm not going to use the vignette effect that is in the library. I'm going to actually do it by myself. So I'm going to use another mask. This is going to be the boundary of where the vignette's going to be. I'm going to make a shape. So in these areas here, that's where the dark vignette's going to be. I'm going to make it softer. I'm going to invert it. So what I'm doing is only going to affect outside the mask. Then I'm going to go to the primary wheels and I'm going to go offset. The offset is the overall strength or brightness of the footage. I'm going to bring that down. And as you can see, when I bring that down, we are getting a vignette effect. I like to do it like this because I want more control over the vignette basically. Okay, so I'm happy with this look. The only thing I'm not happy with is the fact that I think it's too saturated. Like I said before, I want it to be warm but desaturated. So I'm gonna go make a new node and I'm gonna call this desat. And I'm gonna go to the primary wheels. I'm gonna go over to the saturation and I'm gonna desaturate it until it has that kind of dramatic look that I'm going for. Okay, so now that I've done everything that I kind of planned to do, I think to end off this grade, I would actually like to have a green tinge to the shadows. And this is basically what grading is about. It's about experimenting until you feel satisfied. And I'm also going to bring this glow down a bit because I think it's affecting my skin tones, my skin a bit too much. That's good. Okay, so I'm going to make a new node. I'm going to call this green and I'm going to go to the primary wheels. And instead of going to the normal section, I'm going to go to the log wheel section over here. And this basically gives more control. I'm going to go to the shadow. And I'm just going to zoom into an area that I want to see an effect in. And I'm just going to bring a bit more green over here in this wheels. I'm going to steer it more towards the green. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to play with it more until I'm happy. So I'm going to play around with this wheel here by the shadows until I think the look is perfect. And finally, the last step I think before I'm actually satisfied with this look is I'm going to make it a bit more desaturated. So I'm going to go to the saturation and lessen it just a bit more. And there you go. As you can see, this is the whole process of how I got a clip from this to this. And also just overall my grading thought process for most of my clips.